Hey collectors, welcome to Star Wars Collected. I'm Jonathan. If you're new here, I hope you consider subscribing. If you've been here before and you're subscribed, welcome back. Thanks. You're the reason the channel is growing so fast. I really appreciate it. Today what I wanted to talk about was not a specific new collectible, but kind of a character or a version of a character. What I'm talking about is the sometimes controversial Hutt Slayer Leia. There's a lot of different ways to build a collection. I tend to think in representation of characters, representations of moments, things of that nature. So in that way, I don't necessarily end up with a lot of duplicates of characters. As I look around though, I do see quite a few, which I've got, you know, this version of Darth Maul, and this version of Qui-Gon Jinn, and this version of Boba Fett. But one of the characters that's sort of like that is the Hutt Slayer Leia. Now, I grew up calling it Slave Leia. I'm sure most of you grew up calling it that as well. That was just sort of what the term was. But just sort of like modern historians today, you know, we don't really say slaves anymore. We say enslaved people because they were people, and to define them by their oppression is not a kind way to do it. So I kind of love that in the last 5 years or so, maybe longer, I don't know if it's exactly connected to the Disney era, we've recontextualized Slave Leia into, how Jabba the Hutt saw her and Jabba's court saw her, into Hutt Slayer Leia, which sounds so badass, right? And that kind of defines her by, what did she do when she was put in that position? Now, that costume has controversy going, I think, all the way back to production, maybe even pre-production. I know Carrie Fisher had made a lot of jokes about it over the years, about how comfortable it was or not comfortable, or here's George putting me in this bikini. So I think she had her issues with it, which is you don't want anyone to feel uncomfortable about it, but you can't deny that it is iconic. Picture this little Jonathan, which I was never real small, but discovering Return of the Jedi, discovering love, discovering all kinds of things. And Carrie Fisher in the gold bikini, definitely a milestone in my long journey to becoming a man. So I'm going to get out 3 key collectibles that I have in my collection, which show Hutt Slayer Leia. We're going to go through each one of them, pick out things we like, things we don't like about them, and maybe what the future is for merchandise of that costume. We're going to start off with this piece by Kotobukiya. Kotobukiya sells things that they call vinyl model kits. They basically are statues, but instead of being made out of polystone or resin or something like that, they are kind of made out of this, sort of plasticky type thing. I kind of feel like it's sort of a way to get around licensing issues that, there's already Sideshow and Gentle Giant and Iron Studios and all these people that have sort of a statue license, often of a certain scale. And I feel like this is kind of Kotobukiya's way around it. Maybe it's just the way they make the products. I'm not completely sure. But you can tell by the name of it, Kotobukiya. It is a Japanese company. I love Japan, been to Japan, fantastic. And I think it actually shows up sort of in this rendition of her. Her skin, I would say, is more of kind of an idealized Japanese beauty or maybe Asian beauty skin color. And sort of it's a little more ivory, not really Caucasian, which is kind of interesting. And her face, the features on her face, it looks like Carrie Fisher, but it kind of looks like if Carrie Fisher was maybe, just had a little bit of Asian heritage in her or something of that nature. I think that's kind of cool, kind of interesting though. This was made by Japanese people for the Japanese market. It does come over here as well, but to see maybe some of their culture, some of their artistic, experience or their beauty standards kind of coming into a piece of a character that, of course, is super iconic. What she is sitting on is sort of the Jabba's slab that he sits on, his throne, if you will. It's got a gargoyle here, which is really cool. And it has some like green mixed in with so as if it's like a little bit of copper. She has this chain attached here, which actually I think is metal, even though most of it is vinyl. For a kind of a snap together model kit, it has a lot of really nice details. I think it's pretty accurate. The shoes and things of that nature are well done. The fingers and the fingernails all look very nice. Her hair piece in the back, very intricate, the way that it is woven together. It really does look like separate pieces that have been woven together. So it's a pretty cool piece. It's kind of one of the entry-level type things. When I picked this up, this was pretty inexpensive. My guess is that it's a little bit more expensive now, but is a good entry-level type piece. I think the colors they're different than my other pieces. We'll talk about that a little bit. This is kind of very purple. There's some red and things like that, I think, on the other pieces that I have. and the top here is quite gray in color. So in general, it's just sort of more of a subdued piece, although this sort of jade color in the gargoyle down here is pretty bright. So pretty interesting. And she does have an interesting pose. I'm kind of trying to not do an upskirt shot here, but this leg is sort of, bent back, and she's sort of, partially on her foot there. Just a different pose than I have in any of my other statues, which is kind of interesting. So this is the piece from Kotobukiya, the ArtFX line, and it is 1/7 scale. Next, we have the Sideshow Premium Format version. This might be pretty familiar to you if you have collected Sideshow stuff in the past. It's a fairly iconic statue, I would say. I got a really good price on this one. It wasn't one that I was particularly like, I need this in my collection, because I have another piece that I'll show you next that is sort of my iconic piece, but I couldn't pass it up. It is a great version of her. She has very like pressed lips, which is a very Carrie Fisher, I think, type look. I don't know if it's very Return of the Jedi type look, but definitely kind of like A New Hope and things like that. If you've watched my Sideshow Lando unboxing, this staff came in that as well. More detail here. That was one of my few gripes about that figure was from Sideshow, was that the staff itself maybe didn't have quite as much detail in it. This too has a chain hanging from it. I believe this is also metal. The hair on this is not as intricate actually as the Kotobukiya one. Maybe the limitations of the medium, sort of just needing to be sculpted. Things like the hair piece are definitely attached to her hair. It was not a separate piece that was attached on, and looks a little bit like that. And actually, in general, the costume sort of has that feeling. The pieces on the arms, the pieces on the wrist, her side pieces here. The back and the front look a little more applied, opposed to sort of molded in place. And then her top also looks fairly molded in place. The paint on this is not absolutely perfect. There are a couple places here and there where it could maybe use a slightly different take. But I think the likeness of Carrie Fisher on this one is actually very good. And I will also say that this is, I think, much more accurate to what Carrie Fisher physically looked like. The Kotobukiya one before, kind of a little idealized, maybe a little manga sort of look to it. This, Carrie Fisher, beautiful woman, was in great shape for Return of the Jedi, but she wasn't some kind of fitness instructor or something of that nature, and she's like very, very short. So some of the proportions weren't necessarily carrying over, I think, in the former piece. This does have a wire in this cape piece here, so you can pose that. I've done my best to kind of pose her with some modesty here, but obviously there is a very exposed thigh in the actual costume. Boots are molded in place as well. And the base sort of has, it's sort of maybe the deck of the sail barge, but also could kind of be Jabba's palace. This is, not a scene that exists in Star Wars. It's not really a mythos statue like we are, kind of used to now, where they sort of take this sort of, what if type approach to statues. But it is not necessarily an exact scene replica. Take a look at the bottom here. This says Slave Leia, Return of the Jedi, Episode 6, Return of the Jedi. This is 336 to 750. This was made in 2009, premium format figure. So pretty early in the premium format line, but it is definitely a fan favorite, and is something that people get excited about the possibility of purchasing. And like I said, I got a pretty good deal on her, and I feel fortunate to have her in my collection. We started off this video talking about how, we grew up calling her Slave Leia, but more recently we've grown to know her as Hutt Slayer Leia. Well, there is no doubt in this moment, in this statue, she is Hutt Slayer Leia. This is one of my absolute favorite pieces in my entire collection. I got this fairly early on in my collecting. At the time, it was definitely the most expensive purchase I had made. I even remember where I bought it. My wife and I had just gone to a winery, and we were on our way back, and I'm driving home, and I get the little eBay alert, and I'm like, okay, notify me in 15 minutes. Pop back up, I made the highest bid, and I won it. Compared to the prices that I see them going for now, I got a great value on it. I believe this is around 1/6 scale. You have Leia herself here. Great sculpt to Leia. Just the muscles feel real. She doesn't feel like she's just sort of an action figure stuck on the side. She has great movement in her, the way her muscles are tightening things, and her arm is pulling this chain back, and the leg muscles, the way that this fabric part is moving around her. Her ponytail is in mid-swing. Not to get too graphic, but even the way that her arm is moving her breast a little bit over, that is perfect as far as the physics of that goes. And then you can see in Jabba's face, you've got one eye open more so than the other one. You can see a little bit of drool coming out, that tongue sticking out, the tail even coming up a little bit, just sort of, you know, as he's in that moment, trying to get his arms to where that chain is, which you can't get to. I love that this chain is a piece that, you know, theoretically you can move around a little bit, so you can kind of tuck it just how you see as fit. And it's, you know, in her hands here and here, still attached to her neck. Just great details. Definitely one of my absolute favorite pieces. If the house was on fire and I had to save one piece of my collection, this would be in the running at least. You have Jabba's tattoo on here, and as you can see on the back here, you can see a little bit more of the motion. You can see Leia's back muscles there. It's just really well done. It feels, you know, a lot of this stuff that I get, especially the statues, you know, you're trying to capture that moment from the movie, something that you really loved, and this does such a great job at doing that. The paint job on Jabba is pretty good. He's kind of a tough one to get. He's sort of green, he's sort of yellow, he's got some beige on his stomach, so they've done a good job with that and all the detail in there. But really, for me, it really just comes down to how Leia is sculpted, just that look on her face in this moment, slaying that Hutt. So this is the Sideshow piece, and let's level it up real quick here. On the bottom, it says, "You're going to regret this." That's the name of the diorama. This is number 88 of 750, and there is a Jabba picture on the back. I'm gonna flip this open real quick, just to make sure Leia doesn't fall off. So you can kind of get an idea of what this piece looks like. Pretty cool on the bottom here. This one was made in 2010. Probably came into my collection around 2016, 2017, something of that nature. Just a great piece. If I had to choose one of the pieces, if one of them's staying, it's definitely this one. Collectors, I got one more piece that I'm going to show you guys real quick. You guys know I love 1:1 scale replicas, so I'm going to go ahead and get out my gold bikini that I had custom made for myself, put it on, model it for you guys, and we'll go through the details. Oh my gosh, did you see that Womp Rat run out of here? Jeez. Just kidding. That would not be something, that'd be like Star Wars canceled is what that would be. Not something we need to see here. But this is my Hutt Slayer collection Leia. Like I said, I really enjoy the fact that they've kind of recontextualized Slave Leia into Hutt Slayer Leia. I think it fits the character. I think it fits the moment better, you know, and it kind of takes her from sort of just being this thing that I lusted after when I was a teenage boy to sort of being this like really badass moment. You know, Leia always was, you know, when she was down, she had hope, and she always found a way to overcome and persevere. And that's, you know, when you're chained up to an autonomous booger, it's hard to imagine getting much worse, and you know, she goes and chokes him out. So really cool character. Of course, we love Leia. Could always use more Leia in our collection, more Leia collectibles. But speaking of which, there are always rumors that Disney is going to stop making Slave Leia, Hutt Slayer Leia merchandise. But then it seems like every 6 months or so, we see new merchandise come out. So I wouldn't put too much stock into that. They might not be making action figures or something like that too heavily right now, but I think you still see this costume used out there in the universe. So guys, if you enjoyed videos like this, please consider subscribing. If you enjoyed this video, please give me a like, and I'll see you guys on the next one.